Welcome to the Lifecycle Cost Analysis, or LCCA tutorial for PavementLCA.com. This is a new feature starting with version 3.1, and it allows you to create a library of cost items to calculate total costs for initial construction and rehabilitation steps, or to enter costs manually for each step, and to perform an LCCA for the entire project. I've got a pretty simple project open here. You'll see it's just a couple of lanes. When I open it up, it's our tutorial Portland cement example. In the project information page, before we used to have project type and project location information over here. Now we've added this LCCA information here. We've got a project currency of Canadian or US dollars. I'm going to do this example in Canadian dollars. The exchange rate between the two, if you want to put that in, if you're interested in calculating in both currencies. And we have here for the LCCA analysis, we've got a real inflation rate and a real discount rate. Right now it's defaulted according to the location, and this is based on national averages for inflation rate. And um, if you want to find out where those numbers come from, we've got little question marks here. If you click on the question mark, it brings you to another location, another web page here, and it's information from the World Bank about real interest rates and real inflation rates, and you can choose it from there for the national average or whatever number you want. You can enter whatever number you want here. Right now, this is the Canadian average. If I change the location to a US location, you'll see here that the inflation rate and the discount rate have changed, and those are US averages for now. But again, you can put in whatever rate you want for your analysis in there. And also, when you're doing the analysis later, you can change that rate if you want to. So that's the default for this location. I'm going to go to my project roadway, open it up here. And you'll see here it's a pretty simple road, 2 lifts with a granular layer. There's an initial cost box here that has always been present, but we haven't used it we haven't had the LCCA module in order to use those numbers. So you can enter a number here if you want for this project, and let's say it's $500,000. And that's how you can put your initial construction costs in. But there's also some new boxes down here where we try to calculate the cost, and we do that from the project library. Well, we start with the project library. So the libraries, and they're actually a user library. They are for your username as opposed to for each project. And I'm opening here libraries, and I'm going to open up this cost item library, and I'm going to open it up in a new tab and go up to the new tab there, and you'll see this cost item library here. And at the moment it's empty because as a new user, let's say we don't have any user defined cost items. We have a bunch of database cost items that are already added to the database. So I'm going to click on include database, and there are many of them. I think there's 105. They're based on the numbers from the sample projects, and it's per material or per activities. So for example, I'm going to look at, well, we're working in an Ontario project, so let's filter the list a little bit and say it contains Ontario projects only, and we're looking at concrete roadway, so I'm going to filter that to concrete as well. And that, whoops, I misspelled that. Contains the word concrete. And that narrows it down a little bit. So we have a bunch of them already sort of in the database. And you'll see here the example I'm going to use is concrete full depth repair. Based in Ontario, we've got as $100 per meter squared. And The other one I want to do is concrete texturization, which is diamond grinding, and that's at $10 per meter squared. But these are in the database, so I don't need to do anything with them here. We just know that they're in the database. Um, I suppose actually we could do is copy them here, and that will make it a user-defined this, and we could change it here. So let's say if we wanted to change that number to $11 per square meter. We've got units of measure down here. Price distribution log normal is the normal LCCA price distribution form. We have economy of scale numbers over here, which I'm not going to use today, um, but they can be used to fine tune your LCCA model, and I'm going to save that as new. And in fact, I should have changed the name as well, but you'll see, in fact, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to edit that and I'm going to call it user defined. I'll just call it, I'll add user to this. And so we have one here defined. We can also add one manually, and I'm just going to call this user example. And you can choose a cost item type down here. And we've got, so let's say it's construction. I'm going to say initial construction and initial construction there. As an activity, since it's a cost for an activity type, we're not going to choose a material type down here or an energy type, and we'll put in a unit cost of, let's say, $500. You have to know what your $500 per what, and in this case, we're doing it per meters and per meter of roadway. And I'll explain that. You'll see that later when we get to the initial construction calculation. So I'll hit save there. And now I've got this user example and concrete texturization in my library. So as I say, the library's there. It'll stay as the library for your user account. You can use them in multiple projects. But I'm going to go back to our current project. And you'll see here we've got the roadway information. We're back at the roadway information. And these are the places we're going to use the initial construction calculations. But if I don't want to enter this manually, I need to have cost items saved for this project specifically. So I'm going to go back to this return the project to project. And this brings us to the project level information, where project information, roadways, etc. And I'm going to go to LCCA cost items tab over here on the right. And this is blank because for this project, we have no cost items for this project. So I'm going to add from my library. So I click on costs from the library, and you'll see here, it shows all the database cost items plus the two we've just added. And I've just sorted it by name. So I'm going to go down and look for there's the user example that we created down there. And I'm going to look for my concrete. I could use the filters on this too, but I've got concrete texturization. And I've got my user concrete texturization there. So I'm going to click on that. I want to add that to this library. And I want to add another one for concrete full depth repair. And this is one of the ones from the database that was already included. And I'm going to use the Ontario one. We're in an Ontario project. I'm going to click on that. And when I say copy selections, those two user and database items will be added to this project's LCCA cost items. Now I can create one. I don't have to use the library if I don't want to, if I just want to create them for the project. So I can add a new cost item here, and I'm going to do this for our initial construction. And I'm going to call it construction with initial construction as its activity type and activity. I'm going to give it a cost of, let's say, $600 per meter of roadway. And I'm going to click save. And this is pretty much exactly what we just did in the library um, to create that other one another example we did. But this is the one I'm going to use in this project. So I've created my LCCA cost items. I'm going to save my project. Success, I've saved it. Now I'm going to go back to my project roadway. And you'll see here we had put in a number here before, but we didn't save it, so it's not showing now. But down here in calculated cost, so it's looking for a Canadian dollars per meter. We've got a 1 kilometer road, so that's 1,000 meters. So if I want to put in a unit cost, I can click in here and choose initial construction. Copy that selection. That's $600 per meter. The calculated cost is $600,000, 1,000 meters times 600. And if I want to use that as initial cost, I click copy and the number goes up there. Now, I can also enter this manually if I want to. I can go 610,000 if I want to, and that's fine too. So, and I'm going to update the roadway. So I've saved my initial cost to $610,000. Now for rehabilitation steps, it's the same thing. We go into each rehab step. We've got this concrete full depth repair. I'm going to open each rehab step up, and we've got similar things here. I'm going to look for my unit cost, and I'm going to choose it here. I've got concrete full depth repair, $100 per meter squared. Click on that, copy the selection. My $100 per meter squared, I'm doing this on 400 meters squared, which is 5% of the total roadway surface area. Way we learned in the rehab steps videos. And then I copy that to there. $40,000 for this cost for this rehab step. I save the changes. I go into the other concrete full depth repair. I could do the same thing. And this one, I just put in the number I want. I know that I'm doing 800 meters squared at $10 a square meter. That's $80,000. Click there, save changes. And now we have costs for these two items in this column here. And the same thing for diamond grinding. I can look for the cost in my project library, project table. I've got concrete texturization user, copy that selection. It's $11. I'm doing 8,000 square meters, which is 100% of the roadway. So it ends up being $88,000. And I click Save Changes there. And for the second concrete texturization, I'm just going to put in $88,000. It's the same 100% of the roadway. And then I'm going to save, or in this case, update the roadway. So I've entered costs for all my items, rehab and initial construction, and I want to produce a report. So I'm going to go over here to reports on the left-hand side. I'm going to right-click and open project reports in a new tab. You don't have to open in a new tab. I just find it a lot easier to have them open. I've got my project up here, tutorial PCC LCCA, excuse me, and I want to produce a life cycle cost analysis report. So you'll see here, we've got exchange rate and inflation rate and discount rate that I had specified before. You can change them here if you want. And I click Submit Report Request, and it should give me my LCCA report. And here we have it, a simple, shortened list of activities. We have by year, at year 25, we have the full depth repair and the diamond grinding, and the same thing at year 40. At year 0, we have the initial construction. So we have numbers in this column and then in the maintenance column. And at year 50, there's a residual value because the lifespan of the activities at year 40 were set to last for 15 years, which goes beyond the 50-year lifespan of the of the analysis period. If I scroll down a little bit, we've got individual costs for individual steps. So initial construction, you'll see here, there's our total 610,000, and it's 600, the net present value is 610,000 at year 0. At concrete full depth repair at year 25, the cost is here, it's more than we had input because it's affected by inflation, but the net present value is affected by the discount rate, so we end up with that number there. And the same thing for the other steps down here, as well as residual value. And then down below here, we got some pie charts. This is pretty simple. We've got total user cost is 100%, 0%, and agency cost is 0 because we don't have any user cost is from the use phase from PVI, and we haven't put that in this roadway. And then over here, we've got construction and maintenance. And if you've got more pieces to that pie, that diagram will be a little bit more colorful. And then down here, you'll see here, we've got bar graph at each year. So year 0, we have this initial construction cost. If I scroll over it, it gives me my details over there. At year 25, as I scroll over that, I've got a maintenance cost, and at year 40, a maintenance cost, and then as I scroll over at year 50, I have the residual cost. So that's the basics of the life cycle cost report. If I want to go back and add something, so for example, we can add costs for fuel use in pavement vehicle interaction, and I'll do that a little bit later in the full example. And we can do operating energy as well. So I'm going to just do that quickly here for operating energy. So I'm going to go back. I'm in my project roadway here. I'm going to return to my project here, the project level, and then I'm at project information page. And I'm going to add an LCCA cost item again. So I'm going to add a new cost item, and I'm going to call it for electricity. It is that electricity is an operation phase type of cost, and I'm going to use it as a activity type as well as operation. And then I'm going to, because it's operation, that's operating energy, I'm going to choose my operating energy down here, and I'm going to set it as electricity. And I'm going to give it, I don't know what, let's say 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Unit measure is kilowatt hour. I'm going to click save there and see it's in our LCCA cost items. And then I'm going to add operating energy kilowatt hours. Let's make it 100,000 kilowatt hours. I don't know what a actual number would be for lighting. I'm going to save the project. So we've entered cost for electricity and amount of electricity on an annual basis. I'm going to go back to reports and submit report request again, and we'll get a new life cycle cost analysis report. And you'll see here at every year there's a number for electricity operating energy consumption here. And if I scroll down again to year 25, you'll see we have 3 numbers. We've got we've got a total for 3 different activities here. If I scroll down on the page to show the individual contributions, so there at every year we have initial construction at year 0, and then at every year we have an operating energy consumption. Then at year 25 we have a concrete full depth repair, a diamond grinding, and an operating energy consumption as well. And the same goes all the way to the end of year 50. And then here's our pie. We've got a much bigger section of operating energy consumption here compared to maintenance and construction. And you'll see here in the bar graph, we've got a little bar for each year for the electricity. And if you scroll over it, you'll see there's a number for operating energy consumption. Only if I go to year 25 and scroll over it, there's an amount for maintenance and an amount for operating energy consumption. And that's again, the basics of the life cycle cost reports. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my projects page, go to My Projects, and I'm going to show I'm going to open a new project, and this is one of the sample projects. It's a full PCC arterial road. It has all of the typical, I'm going to quickly show the roadway. It has all the typical rehab steps plus fully costed items. I've got a cost for the initial cost for the roadway. Each rehab step has a cost associated with it. It's already been entered. We also have PVI, pavement vehicle interaction, entered for this. The PVI produces an amount of fuel, excess fuel, used due to the roughness and aging of the road. And it's based on the amount of trucks and light duty vehicles, in other words, diesel road and short haul and gasoline fuel types. And we want to put a cost to that. So I'm going to go back to the project here. And I open the LCCA cost items, and you'll see I've got a few in here already, and I've got these two, PVI gasoline and PVI diesel. They each have $1 per liter. I'm going to open up one of them, and this PVI diesel, it's part of operations. We're using diesel road short haul. There's a whole bunch of different energy types in here, but diesel road short haul is the one we want for PVI. I've got a unit cost of $1 per liter, and very similar thing for the gasoline, and I happen to have $1 per liter in there as well. So those are the cost items that are going to be used for PVI use phase calculations. And I'm going to go back to reports, and this is the new project we just opened, PCC Arterial Road LCCA, and I'm going to submit a report request. And here's our final report. So we've got our initial construction at year 0. At each year, we don't have operating energy consumption in this project, but we do have the PVI effects. So here are the calculations for the PVI due to IRI and PVI deflection. And again, that's calculated on a yearly basis. And we scroll down here to year 25. And again, we've got rehab steps at year 25 and at year 40 again, and then residual costs at year 50. If we go down to the individual years, you'll see here diesel road short haul, that's the truck PVI values, and gasoline or the light duty vehicle car values. And then again, at each year, we have those. We scroll down to year 25. We've got our full depth repair, partial depth repair, seal joint, concrete texturization, and then we've got our PVI effects again, gasoline and short haul, diesel short haul. And then if we scroll down again to the pie charts, you'll see here we've got our IRI fuel consumption, we have our deflection in the orange, we have the maintenance costs and the construction costs, and over here, where before we didn't have PVI calculations, we end up with agency costs, so that's like building the road itself and operating the road, and our user costs, which is the fuel use in the PVI calculations. And then in our bar graph here, same as before, we've got an initial construction, and then in each year we've got, and it's hard to see because the deflection numbers are small and they're in yellow at the top of these bars, but you'll see when you scroll over, we've got a PVI IRI number and a PVI deflection number. And then at year 12, we've got a maintenance step. At year 25, we've got a maintenance step plus PVI fuel consumption, same at year 40. And then at year 50, we've got our residual costs. I'll get the mouse away from that so we can see that. And this is perhaps more of a typical roadway, a complete roadway with others, as opposed to the simple example we used earlier. Now, if I go back to reports on the project page and I go back to reports here, I've got under reports, I've got comparison reports, and I'm going to open that in a new tab. And we can do comparison reports like the other reports as well. And I'm going to choose these two projects that we just worked on. It's not a great comparison because they're very dissimilar roads, but I'm going to, again, I can change my inflation rate, discount rate, and exchange rate here, and I'm going to submit a report, comparison report. So here's our net present value summary of the two projects by phase compared to each other. A bar graph just down here of initial cost. So that's pretty simple. It's just the initial cost, obviously. And then of all the phases, you'll see here in our sort of our more substantial road, we've got a big chunk due to use phase with the orange and yellow sections in IRI. Again, you can scroll over and see the individual pieces. And then our other road here, our simple example, didn't have a use phase. So it's maybe not a great comparison because the two roads are not compatible with each other, but that's the idea. And that gives us our comparison reports for LCCA, just like the comparison reports of the life cycle effects um, and summary measures, etc. And as with all reports, you can export them to Excel, then work on them or use them in presentations any way you want. And that concludes our LCCA tutorial. Thank you.